Hello everyone. There is an LCD monitor on this video. The problem is that voltage is absent in here. And these marked capacitors have been changed in another repair shop. But voltage is still absent here. And monitor backlight doesn't turn on. Let's check this board and see its different blocks. And also check its circuit and then find its problem. With the help of this number, IP35155A, I can find this board schematic. And then analyze the board using its schematic. I have the schematic file. Let me show it to you. Which includes power and inverter. I'll check power circuit of this board first. As you see, this is the input that includes two phase and null parts. And by following this path, you can see that it enters F101 fuse. Its working voltage is 250 volt. And it can tolerate up to 3.15 ampere. Let me show it on the board. It enters fuse from here, which is F101 fuse. 250 volt and 3.15 ampere is the current value that it can tolerate. After the fuse, there are some anti-shock capacitors. And there is a resistor under this adhesive. I'll show these two components on the schematic. And also this inductor. This block is for filtering which filter input noises and prevents them from entering the circuit. Therefore, there will be smooth voltage in here. Let me show them on the schematic. The yellow capacitor is 301 capacitor, and its specifications are written near it. This capacitor is between phase and null and it is placed in parallel. And it's a 275 volt AC capacitor. Let me check its capacity. It's 47 kiloohm. Its capacity is written on the capacitor under this label. I'll need to remove this resistor to see its capacity. So this capacitor is placed in parallel between phase and null. This TH101 resistor is placed in series in neutral direction of circuit. It is anti-shock as well, which prevents from voltage fluctuation. And it causes the system to be protected from them. And by following this path, it enters an inductor. And as you see, both phase and null pass through it. And there are some capacitors in here. Blue capacitors on the board. These are the capacitors. And AC voltage enters diode bridge. And phase and neutral enter middle pins of diode bridge, which we can see on diode bridge. Diode bridge output includes positive and negative is present here. And the other side is positive, which is DC. To perform the test, I can place multimeter probe on phase or null input pin. And test this direction up to here in buzzer mode, and it needs to be connected. And it's the same for null as well. I can test this part up to this part in buzzer mode. And for example, if this inductor was disconnected and burned, or a component of this part faced problems, we can make sure of the direction by buzzer test.
از سلامت مسیرمون مطمئن بشیم.
And to check voltage of this part, I need to set multimeter on AC mode,
رو در حالت AC قرار
because there is
بدیم.
AC voltage here.
صد AC است.
And after diode bridge,
پل دیود
there is its output which is present on pins 1 and 4.
یک و پای 4ش بود به صورت
And this pin is GND, which enters capacitor, which is this big capacitor.
این قسمت داریم.
It's connected to negative of diode bridge, and positive of this diode bridge is connected to this big capacitor.
هم می‌بینید که به خازن بزرگمون وصل میشه.
So output of diode bridge, which is 330 volt,
پل دیودمون
needs to be present on this 450 volt and 100 microfarad capacitor.
فرات باید داشته باشیم.
I can test it up to here.
رو تست بگیریم.
The 330 volt that needs to be present on here enters transformer.
داشته باشیم. وارد ترانس
This is the transformer.
ترانسمون هست.
I've put a label on it which I'll remove now.
لیبلی رو برای مشتری زدم که رو برمی‌دارم.
This is the transformer. 330 volt enters its pin 3,
پای دو ترانسمون میشه.
and there is an STRIC here.
آیسی که در اینجا قرار داره یک آیسی
Let me show it on the board.
شما نشون میدم اینجا هست.
This STRIC is made of a PWM and a MOSFET,
آیسی است که از یک PWM و ماسفت تشکیل شده در داخل خودش و
and it can control the required voltage in the output by connecting and disconnecting this voltage. It can generate necessary voltage of system in power output.
کنترل کنه در خروجی.
It can also control output by the help of the feedback it gets through optocoupler.
و دیود زنر
And 102 Zener diode.
زنر 102 میتونه روی خروجیمون کنترل داشته باشه.
Let me show you this IC's datasheet.
شماتیک میتونیم دیتا شیت این آیسی رو هم پیدا کنیم. من قبلا این دیتا شیت این آیسی رو هم گرفتم.
Let's see its
و،
pins.
روی پایه های اون هم با هم ببینیم که به چه شکلی است.
This is the IC's datasheet and you can see its
در
specifications.
اینجا مشخصاتش رو نوشته و
You can see some information about the IC here.
ویژگی اولیه این آیسی رو در اینجا میتونید ببینید.
Let's go to page 2.
به دومین آیسی ما میتونیم ببینیم که
As you see, 330 volt enters this IC2.
یکی از پایه هاش کلا ورودی همون 330 ولت اون وارد همین آیسی هم میشه.
330 volt is present on drain pin of the MOSFET inside this IC as well.
ما 330 ولت رو داریم.
And feedback voltage enters IC,
فیدبکی رو هم در این قسمت وارد آیسی
which can be controlled by optocoupler. A lot of times these capacitors lose their capacity, and that causes that there wouldn't be any proper feedback, and also no proper output voltage. And the problem will get solved by changing these capacitors. There is another block to talk about. As you see, transformer is divided into two parts. A part is for output, and another part generates necessary voltage for STRIC by inductance. And you need to check its VCC. In most cases, this voltage can be the problem, or this diode can be problematic and therefore the IC's driver voltage gets absent. Let's scroll down and see what's there. You can see IC shape here. Pin 1 is drain pin, pin 2 is GND pin, pin 3 is VCC of this IC, pin 4 is feedback, pin 5 is empty, and pin 6 is STR voltage. And you can see all the information about them in the following. You can see the schematic on page 15. I mentioned that there is DC voltage after the diode bridge, and 330 volt enters STRIC. And on the other side, it passes through a transformer and enters drain of the MOSFET inside STRIC. Inductor of transformer generates voltage.
ولتاژی تولید
That gets
میشه که
converted to
مجبور
DC after passing through this diode
DC تبدیل میشه و
and gets filtered by this capacitor.
صاف میشه و
And around 22 volt enters IC by ZD101 Zener diode,
ولتاژ حدود 22 ولت وارد
which is the working voltage of the IC. In fact, this Zener diode stabilizes that voltage.
زنر تثبیت میکنه.
We can check this part as well.
میتونیم با هم ببینیم
Output of power block is 12 volt and 2.5 ampere,
پاورمون در این قسمت 12 ولت 2.5 آمپر زده و
and there is 5 volt here.
در این قسمت داریم که
These are ACs,
به صورت AC
and they get converted into DC after passing through this diode,
تبدیل میشه
and they get smoothed by these capacitors, and its noise gets removed by this inductor,
گرفته میشه و
and gets used by a consumer.
استفاده میشه.
It also has a feedback that enters IC through optocoupler and can control the output.
قسمت اون رو کنترل کنیم که وارد IC اون میشه.
In fact, if there is fluctuation in here,
این نوسانی که داشته باشیم
it makes light of LED inside the optocoupler to increase and decrease.
کم و زیاد میکنه
And that change in light causes feedback voltage that entered IC to change as well.
و
And IC realizes if output voltage has dropped or raised.
ولتاژمون افت کرده یا افزایش پیدا کرده.
Let's go back to schematic. I checked the board up to barrel capacitor,
بررسی کردیم تا رسیدن به خازن
which is in here.
قسمت رو داشتیم.
You saw transformer pins,
پایه‌هاش رو با هم دیدیم.
and also STRIC.
آیسی استیارمون رو هم با هم دیدیم که به چه شکلی بود و
And I also showed you the output voltages.
این ولتاژها رو با هم دیدیم.
And on this schematic,
روی این شماتیک ما میتونیم
you can see that 15 volt is present on one direction,
مسیر ولتاژ 15 ولت
which is used on connection 2 as well. And as you see, 5 volt is present on the other direction.
رو هم میتونیم ببینیم.
Let me show on the board as well.
به شما نشون بدم
Output voltage of transformer enters these two diodes.
این دو تا دیود
They are related to 5 volt.
5 ولت ما هست.
That generate 5 volt by these capacitors.
ولتاژ 5 ولت رو
The voltage can be measured on these capacitors.
تا در واقع این ولتاژ رو اندازه‌گیری کنیم.
Next one is this diode, which is the output of this transformer,
دیود خروجی دیگه این ترانسفورمر
which gets rectified by this diode, and the voltage gets smoothed by these capacitors.
این ولتاژ
And 15 volt needs to be present on this capacitor.
باید داشته باشیم.
So 15 volt is present on this one, which is related to power block,
مربوط به بخش تغذیه‌مون
and 5 volt is present on these capacitors.
ولت رو هم روی این خازن‌ها داریم که میتونیم اون رو
There is an inductor here, testing capacitors, diodes and inductors and all these components
و صرف و تمام قطعاتی که در اینجا
are explained on basic electronic videos. You can refer to them if you have any problems testing the components,
این قطعات مشکل دارید ویدیو مربوط به اون بخش
because you'll learn how to easily test them
تست کنید و
and make sure of them.
سلامت این قطعات مطمئن بشید.
So I covered power block output up to
ما
here.
خروجی بخش پاورمون رو بررسی کردیم.
I'll connect power to this board and check voltages of different blocks
دستگاه متصل می‌کنم و ولتاژهای بخش مختلف رو به شما
to see how they are.
ببینیم به چه شکلی هست.
Make sure to use test light when you want to connect power,
متصل کنید از لامپ تست استفاده
so that if there was short circuit on the board, you would realize it by using a test light.
تست متوجه بشین که بردتون اتصالی داره یا نه.
I connected power to board.
برق رو به بردمون متصل کردم.
I'll start checking voltage from the back side.
من به ولتاژ گیری.
The advantage of LCD boards is that they have 2 layers,
LCD اینه که
and you can easily see directions from the back of boards.
پیگیری کنید.
I'm going to check phase and null. I'll set the multimeter on voltage mode. AC and DC voltages of my multimeter are here,
DC و AC رو در این قسمت
and I need to change the mode to AC by pressing select button.
حالت اون رو به حالت AC تبدیل
Multimeter is now on AC mode.